The accusation was leveled first when you branded me incompetent, Maxine. Dan Bongino took his place in the center of the CNN studio in Los Angeles at 9 o'clock during the prime broadcast slot. 300 spectators crowded into a room built for audience interaction, with half dressed in red and half in blue, all braced for a conflict. Cameras were positioned at every angle under the intense heat of the studio lights, while Jake Tapper sat between the opponents attempting to radiate an authority he simply did not possess that evening. Bongino's voice held a distinct characteristic, that specific law enforcement tone, not shouting or hostile but utterly final. It was the tone that implies we both understand the inevitable conclusion of this encounter. You called me unqualified, describing a former NYPD officer and Secret Service agent who guarded presidents and worked for his paycheck as unfit. You called me unqualified while Maxine Waters sat opposite him, radiating a confidence forged over 30 years in Congress. It was a confidence born from decades of avoiding genuine repercussions and a career spent evading accountability for her actions. She wore an expression that suggested she had handled far worse adversaries than him, but she was mistaken. Bongino leaned in closer, just a fraction. If you wish to discuss credentials, then let us examine your credentials. Let us discuss 30 years in Congress while your district deteriorated, or using your office to rescue your husband's financial institution. Let us discuss paying your own daughter more than $1 million from campaign coffers, or living in a $6 million Beverly Hills estate while representing South Central LA. He paused to let the silence hang, while 300 people held their breath in anticipation. Let us have that conversation right now. Waters adjusted her position slightly, but Bongino noticed the movement immediately. Years of analyzing suspects, reading criminals, and studying people preparing to deceive allowed him to catch every detail. He turned to address the camera directly, telling the folks watching at home that what they were witnessing was straightforward. 5 scandals, 5 instances of corruption, and 5 reasons why this woman should have faced prosecution ages ago instead of remaining in Congress. We are talking about bank bailouts, payoffs to children, Beverly Hills estates, inciting riots, and 30 years of the same behavior. She is going to answer for every bit of it right here and right now on film with no route for retreat. The atmosphere in the studio transformed, becoming electric and perilous. This was not a standard debate. It was an interrogation, and everybody in the room recognized it. Bongino smiled, though it was neither friendly nor warm. It was the smile a detective offers when he possesses the evidence and knows the suspect is guilty. It was the look of someone who knows. The proceeding is merely a formality before the handcuffs are applied. If you have been waiting for someone to finally ask Maxine Waters the questions that no one else dares to ask, share this moment. What I am about to display is not a theory or an opinion, but documented fact and hard evidence. It is the type of proof that sends individuals to prison, and he lifted a thick folder containing documents and proof. Let us proceed, as Bongino wasted no time with the build-up and went straight on the attack, just as interrogations are conducted. Let me clarify something for you, Congresswoman, he said, emphasizing the title to make it sound nearly derogatory. During the financial crisis, you recall banks collapsing everywhere, including small community banks that had served neighborhoods for generations. They were all dying and desperate as he began pacing with that building radio host energy. Congress was determining who survived and who perished, deciding who received taxpayer funds and who was left behind. These were crucial decisions involving life and death for thousands of businesses and millions of jobs. Waters attempted to interrupt by raising her hand with her signature move, saying she was not finished. He was not aggressive, but definitive, stating that she sits on the Financial Services Committee, which makes these decisions. "You possess power, access, and influence," he said as he stopped pacing to face her directly. "You also have a husband named Sidney Williams, who sits on the board of One United Bank. That is a bank that was failing, desperate, and in need of a government bailout. What are the probabilities or the chances?" he asked with sarcasm dripping thick and heavy. "So let me ask you a simple question requiring a yes or no answer. Did you arrange a meeting between Treasury officials and One United Bank?" Waters' hand drifted to her pearls in an unconscious gesture that Bongino saw and noted. It was a tell indicating she did not realize she had been caught. "I followed proper protocols," she said, but he cut her off, saying that is not a yes or no answer. He was not yelling or hostile, just pure police officer, asking if she arranged the meeting yes or no. The situation demanded a binary response, and the studio fell into complete silence. 300 people, all the cameras, and the entire crew froze while waiting and watching. Her voice emerged smaller than before, admitting she facilitated communication. "You arranged it," he said, making a statement rather than asking a question. "You utilized your position and power to secure a meeting for your husband's failing bank with Treasury officials. 1 week later, $12 million of taxpayer money, which is your money, went to save her husband's bank." He pointed at the audience to emphasize whose money was used. He walked toward the audience and stood among them as one of their own. "How many of you know someone who lost a business during that crisis?" he asked, requesting them to raise their hands. Hands began to rise, 1, then 5, then dozens scattered throughout the room. These were people who had lived through the financial crisis, losing businesses, savings, and everything they owned. Bongino pointed at them, noting they did not receive meetings or bailouts. They did not have Maxine Waters intervening on their behalf, so they simply lost everything. He turned back to Waters, noting that her husband's bank was saved using their money. "That is not complicated, Maxine. That is corruption pure and simple. That is what we call corruption where I come from." She tried to speak again, her voice defensive, claiming other banks also received federal funds. "Other banks were not married to members of Congress," he said, his voice rising and building. "That is the distinction, and that is the crime. Using your high office to benefit your own family." Waters attempted her signature move once more, raising a hand and claiming she was reclaiming her time. "You do not have time to reclaim," Bongino said without backing down. He was louder now, overwhelming her, stating the people of California have waited 15 years for answers. "It is my time now, and you are created to provide answers." The studio erupted, not with applause or booing, but just noise. It was the sound of 300 people realizing they were witnessing something authentic and raw. Jake Tapper tried to interject to maintain order, but nobody was listening. Bongino produced documents and held them up, citing the Ethics Committee report. "Your own Ethics Committee found that you intervened and that your husband's bank benefited. They found documented problems, but you know what happened as a result." "Absolutely nothing happened," he said as he walked back to center stage to stand before Waters. "Let me break this down for everyone watching at home. Small banks across California and America that served communities and employed people failed and received nothing. They died, but one special bank where Maxine Waters' husband sat on the board received $12 million. The person who arranged it and used her congressional power to save her family's investment was her." He pointed at Maxine Waters, calling her the Beverly Hills Marxist living in luxury while preaching about poverty. You used your money to save her family's wealth. Waters could not maintain eye contact, looking down at her notes or hands. She looked anywhere but at Bongino, the cameras, or the 300 people watching her squirm. Bongino saw the break, the crack, and the moment when her armor began to fail. In my time with the Secret Service, we investigated financial crimes, corruption, and bribery. I have seen it. I have arrested people for it, and I know what it looks like. He leaned forward to close the distance, creating that interrogation room proximity. This is it. This is corruption, documented and proven on the record. Someone in the audience shouted to arrest her, and others joined the chant. It started low at first before building into a demand for her arrest. Waters's hands were shaking visibly now, trembling as she tried to raise them to stop the noise. Control was gone, authority was gone, and her power had vanished. She was just a politician facing accusations she could not dodge, and evidence she could not deny. Bongino let the moment build, allowing the audience to express what he had proven. He raised one hand, and the silence was immediate and complete. That is round one. Your tax dollars saving her family's bank, while small banks died. Now he picked up another folder, thicker than the first, to discuss her daughter. Let us talk about the $1 million from campaign funds that went to her daughter. Your donations went to her daughter for years, and Waters' face went pale. The first folder was bad, but this one was worse, and she knew it. Bongino's energy shifted to sarcasm, letting that radio host edge come through. We have established corruption number 1, involving family enrichment and taxpayer money. That is established fact. But wait, there is so much more. He walked toward Waters as she shifted in her seat, looking for exits that did not exist. Let me tell you about Karen Waters, Maxine's daughter, whom I have never met. I do know her bank account, and her bank account is very healthy. The reason is that Mommy has been paying her from campaign funds. Your campaign donations from people who thought the money was going to fighting for their district went to her daughter. He stopped walking and faced the camera to emphasize over $1 million. That is not a typo or a mistake. It is over $1 million. I am just a former cop and a guy who worked for a living. Where I come from, taking donations meant for campaigns and giving them to family is called embezzlement. It is called theft, and it is called fraud. Waters tried to mount a defense with a shaking voice, claiming these are legitimate campaign expenditures. Bongino laughed, actually laughed, asking if $1 million to her daughter is legitimate. He pulled out papers from FEC filings which are public record and undeniable. Karen Waters runs something called slate mailers, which are flyers listing endorsed candidates. They go out during elections and cost maybe 50 grand to produce. Maxine Waters has paid her daughter over $1 million for slate mailers over the years. It is always family, and always the daughter receiving the funds. Let me ask you how many of you have donated to political campaigns. Many hands went up, scattered throughout the studio, regular people and small donors. You thought that money went to ads, staff, and campaigning for your interests? What if I told you it went to the candidate's daughter for family enrichment instead? The murmuring started, an angry sound building and spreading through the room. Bongino turned back to Waters with all due respect, meaning zero respect. Your daughter has gotten rich off your political career, taking over $1 million. It came from small donors, people who could not afford it. and families struggling to make rent. Waters tried again, saying her daughter provides valuable services. He cut her off, breaking down that other campaigns pay maybe $50,000 for the same service. You have paid over $1 million to your daughter, which is 20 times more. How does that work? He asked. But silence was the only answer. I will tell you how it works. It is family enrichment. It is using your position to make your family wealthy by taking money from believers. You give it to people who share your DNA. And that is how it works. He walked back to the audience and stood among them again. These people trusted you and sent money they did not have, thinking it would help their community. Instead, it helped Karen Waters buy a house and a car to live a comfortable life. It was funded by donations from people who struggle, work multiple jobs, and worry about bills. His voice crescendoed, noting that her daughter got rich while they got no representation. The audience erupted with booing and shouting, demanding refunds for the fraud. Waters' hands went to her face to hide, a defensive and guilty gesture. Bongino saw it and knew exactly what it meant from his time in the Secret Service. We investigated financial crimes, money laundering, and fraud, and I have seen it all. This is textbook fraud, taking money under false pretenses for personal gain. Waters tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. Jake Tapper tried to give her an opening, asking if she would like to respond. She cannot respond, because the numbers are public record in FEC filings. Anyone can look them up, seeing over $1 million paid to her daughter. It is documented year by year, payment by payment, always to Karen Waters. He turned to the camera and the 10 million people watching. This is what swamp creatures and Beverly Hills Marxists do. They preach about helping people and fighting for communities, then use your money to enrich their families. Waters was shrinking now, the aggressive matriarch gone, replaced by a politician exposed. With all due respect, your daughter is a millionaire from campaign funds. She is wealthy while South Central struggles with crime, and Watts has poverty. He paused to let the reality sink in that she is fine on their money. That is 2 scandals, bank bailouts, and daughter payoffs, both enriching her family. He picked up another folder, even thicker, saying, "Now we talk about where she lives. You are going to love this. The Beverly Hills Marxist in her $6 million mansion." Waters looked up with real fear in her eyes because she knew there was no defense. Bongino's tone changed to mockery mixed with disgust. Let me explain something about Maxine Waters' district, District 43 in California. He pulled out a map showing South Central Los Angeles, Watts, and Compton. These are some of the poorest communities in California with high poverty and crime. That is who she represents, and who has voted for her for 30 years. You know where Maxine lives, he asked, pausing to build the tension. She lives in Beverly Hills, and not just near it or adjacent to it. She is in a $6 million mansion in the heart of Beverly Hills. He walked toward Waters, asking when was the last time she spent a night in South Central. Waters tried to answer, saying she did not see how that was relevant. It is a simple question asking when you last slept among the people you represent. I will answer for you. Never, or close enough to never, that it does not matter. You live in luxury, far away from the poverty you preach about, and the crime you ignore. He turned to the audience, explaining that when he was NYPD, he lived in Brooklyn. Public servants live with the people, not away from them in mansions. You advocate for the poor while living in the top 1%. Waters tried deflection, saying many representatives live outside their districts. Bongino's voice rose, stating many representatives do not spend 30 years preaching about poverty while accumulating millions. He walked among the audience, asking how many lived in the area they work or serve. Most hands went up because normal people live near their community. Maxine is not normal, she is special and elite. Her constituents in South Central average $30,000 a year. They struggle with crime, poverty, and failing schools in some of the hardest circumstances in America. Their congresswoman lives in a $6 million mansion where the average home price is $4 million. She is surrounded by wealth and luxury that her constituents do not have. Waters tried anger, raising her voice to say she dedicated her life. To what? Bongino exploded, losing his control to raw emotion. You dedicated your life to getting rich and accumulating wealth while your district suffers. People of California, South Central, Compton, and Watts are watching. They want to know why their congresswoman lives in Beverly Hills and not near them. You are not one of them. You never were. And you used them. You used their votes, trust, and poverty as a platform to get rich. He produced property records and put them on the screen showing her mansion. Images of luxury were placed side by side with South Central poverty and crime. $6 million for her versus $30,000 a year for them is the contrast. The audience was getting louder and angrier because this was visual proof. With all due respect, Maxine, you are worth millions while your district struggles. While families in South Central worry about making rent, you are safe and wealthy. That is called hypocrisy, that is called fraud, and that is called using people. You take their support and give them nothing in return except more poverty. He walked toward her one more time, saying what really kills him. It is not that you are rich, for America rewards success. It is that you are rich while preaching against wealth and living in luxury while attacking it. You are a fraud and a Beverly Hills Marxist living the life you claim to oppose. The studio erupted in a standing ovation for the truth and exposure. Waters put her head down, unable to watch or listen. Present, but broken. That is 3 scandals, bank bailout, daughter payoffs, and the mansion. He opened another folder, this one darker and more serious. Now we talk about violence, incitement, and her calling for harassment. This one is personal because I spent my career protecting people. She spent her career putting people in danger. And Waters looked up terrified. This one was on video, featuring her words, her face, and her voice. Bongino's demeanor shifted to that of a protective and angry cop. In the Secret Service, our job was to protect the president and officials from threats. You called for the exact opposite, for harassment and confrontation. He played a video from June 2018 where she spoke at a rally. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, you create a crowd. You push back on them. He repeated slowly, letting the words hang there. Those are your words, Maxine, not taken out of context or edited. You are telling people to harass government officials and create a mob. Create a crowd means mob action, and push back means physical confrontation. She is not talking about peaceful protest. She is talking about intimidation. You said, tell them they are not welcome anymore, anywhere. People listened, created crowds, pushed back, and threatened families. He showed news reports of the Secretary of Homeland Security being threatened at dinner. The White House press secretary was kicked out of a restaurant because of your call to action. Senators were surrounded and harassed at airports because you told people to do it. Waters tried to defend herself, claiming she was talking about peaceful protest. Bongino exploded, saying pushing back and saying not welcome are not peaceful words. In my time protecting presidents, we dealt with real threats every day. People like you give them permission and justification to act. Waters tried to claim she was exercising her First Amendment rights. The First Amendment does not protect incitement, and I know the law. He asked the audience how many had been threatened for their political beliefs. Several hands went up, acknowledging the fear and intimidation. People like Maxine Waters create that fear with their words. In the Secret Service, we knew that words have consequences. You told people to harass officials, and they did, directly following your instructions. When people got hurt and children cried, you did not apologize. You doubled down, refusing to take it back and insisting you meant it. That is intentional and calculated incitement, and the audience was silent. This was about safety and people being hurt because someone with power ordered it. You put real people and their families in danger because you were angry about politics. Waters was crying now, tears of someone who knows they crossed a line. In my time as a cop, we arrested people who incited violence. You should have been arrested because incitement is a prosecutable crime. You got away with it because you are in Congress. But the people remember the danger and the threats. The audience erupted in raw anger, realizing power had been abused. Waters sat with hands over her face, a scared politician exposed. That is 4 scandals, and now we pick up the final folder. We are not done, because now we talk about 30 years of Maxine Waters. This is the summary and the knockout blow. Waters looked up, terrified, because she knew 30 years of secrets were coming out. Bongino looked performatively tired, exhausted by seeing too much corruption. Maxine Waters has been in Congress since 1991, when the Internet was brand new. You know what South Central looked like 30 years ago, poor with high crime. You know what it looks like now after 3 decades of her representation. It is exactly the same, or actually worse, with higher poverty and crime. Every metric is worse, but your bank account got better. Your house and your daughter's bank account improved while South Central waited. Let me break this down with statistics on the screen. 30 years ago, South Central had specific poverty and crime rates. Today, the numbers are the same or higher. 30 years ago, Maxine Waters was worth maybe $1 million. Today, she has multiple millions and a wealthy family. This is someone who got elected to help people, and instead helped herself. You have had 30 years to serve, and your constituents have nothing to show for it. They have the same poverty and struggle, waiting for help that never comes. For you, it has been 30 years of success and wealth accumulation. The people of California want to know what has improved. The answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing has gotten better for them. You have gotten everything, revealing a pattern over 30 years. It is not one mistake. It is a career of using public office for private gain. He walked to center stage, stating, "You have had an entire career to serve. Instead, you made yourself rich, while South Central struggled. That is not public service. That is theft and corruption." The studio was on its feet, witnessing the destruction of someone who abused power. Waters had her head down, broken and exposed after 30 years. That is it, folks. 5 scandals, including bank bailouts and inciting violence. This is what the swamp looks like, and this is what corruption looks like. Share this everywhere, because corruption does not expose itself. The audience erupted in thunderous applause for the truth finally arriving. Waters sat destroyed, the aggressive matriarch gone. Jake Tapper tried to wrap up, but the show was over. The video went viral with millions of views, and the nickname Beverly Hills Marxist became permanent. Conservative media exploded while liberal media could not defend her. Her office stopped answering phones and her staff quit in a mass exodus. The squad stayed silent, and Pelosi released a non-committal statement. 3 ethics complaints were filed citing Bongino's evidence. A primary challenger from South Central announced within hours. Fundraising for the challenger exploded with small donors. Polling showed him leading by huge margins as people learned the truth. Waters deleted her social media and hid in her mansion. Her approval rating collapsed, and community leaders demanded her resignation. Bongino became a hero for asking the simple questions. Waters had no exit strategy, and her career was destroyed. She became a symbol of corruption and self-service. Bongino used the victory to launch bigger platforms. Waters learned that 30 years of getting away with it does not mean forever. Justice finally arrived on live television with the whole world watching.